What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sports Card Strategy Show, the flagship show on the nooffseason.com sports card content network. We are brought to you by nooffseason.com, the sports card investment report. We would love you to save 20% by using the promo code NOOFFSEASON at checkout. You can get a premium membership for 20% off using the promo code NOOFFSEASON at checkout. That's our sports card rankings across all sports, full write-ups, and the play for each athlete that we have ranked. And marketmoversapp.com by Sports Card Investor is another one of our partners. They are allowing you, as a member of our audience, to get the first month for only $1 at marketmoversapp.com if you use the promo code NOOFFSEASON, all lowercase. And I have my main man, the co-host of the Sports Card Strategy Show and the host of the new Baseball Card Strategy Show, Kendall McKee, who also represents Wild Cards Box Breaks on Facebook and, of course, justbaseball.com. Got to show love to all of those guys. Kendall, how's it going, man?
Man, it's awesome. I had a fantastic weekend. Saw some profits come in, which was really good. Anyway, it's just been really good. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk about sports cards. It's Monday morning. My bus route was good this morning, and so I was just ready to talk. I was just like, hey, I got that podcast with Paul later, and I'm going to just get on there and just crush it. So we're good.
I love it. I've been working on the investment report all day, and I actually just recorded an episode of the Basketball Card Strategy Show. So I'm the host of that first episode, and I feel pretty good about it. You know, you did it with the Baseball Card Strategy Show. You're basically talking to yourself for like 45 minutes. So yeah. It's like you got to be really passionate about it. I thought you did a great job on the Baseball Card Strategy Show. So I tried to echo your
minus the Nick Martinez goof.
I had to jump in. Hey, it just allowed a nice little post-production opportunity for me to help you out. I just had to correct it because there is a Nick Martinez. So I just felt like, but yeah, no.
I'm glad you did. When I was talking, I rewatched it and I was like, Nick Martinez, and I'm like, I was so close to getting it right.
You knew it was Nick Gonzalez. You just had. I just think you had Ranger brain. It was like opening day, and
yeah,
I don't know.
I hated him on the Rangers.
Yeah, maybe he traumatized you, so he's in your brain. But anyway, we got a good show to get to. We're gonna bring the energy. Kendall's bringing the energy. We've got some Kendall card sales right after opening day that I think I want to get into. We've got some other baseball talk. I want to talk a little bit about Riley Green and O'Neal Cruz in terms of just some observations, like these guys, one had an injury, another one didn't get the big league promotion. So what does that do, if anything, to their cards? And maybe have you talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. And then, it's going to be baseball mainly with the two of us. And then we're going to have a special guest. Paul Fisher is a heavy golf, hockey, and basketball card investor. And he's actually a member of the premium sports card investment report at No Off Season. And he's had so many intelligent things to say in emails to me that I decided to invite him on the show to talk a little bit about his experience, but also golf specifically. We're post-Masters and hockey card investing, because I think hockey's heating up being on ESPN, and the NHL playoffs are coming just like the NBA playoffs. So we've got all these niche shows that we want you to check out: the Basketball Card Strategy Show, the Baseball Card Strategy Show. We talk a lot about F1. We talk a lot about soccer. We've got shows for each of those sports. So on today's show, we're going to talk mainly baseball, golf, and hockey. Maybe toss in a little bit of basketball. But Kendall, let's get started with the first topic. I think you're super excited to tell us about your card sales. You ran sort of an opening week sale. And you also acquired a GOAT card, and you've got some PSA subbing that you want to talk to us about. So let's just go one by one. Talk to us about your card sales and kind of what people can learn, what the audience can learn from what you did.
Yeah, so this was my first time. So, okay, let me back up a little bit. I've been friends with a guy named named Kyle from Let's Talk Wax. It's a YouTube channel. We actually have had him do some writing for Just Baseball. I think his name is Kyle Walker. Let me make sure that that is his last name so I don't just butcher that again like Nick Martinez. Walter, not Walker.
Okay.
So Kyle Walker is a friend of mine. We've been chatting back and forth for maybe about a year now, maybe a little bit less than that. But one thing we were talking about in the off season is like a strategy to really not only talk about investing in the off season and selling during the season, but really doing that, because that's kind of been where I knew I needed to get. But it seems like it's emotional during the season when you see a guy just popping off, you want to just be a part of that. And how can you get ahead in front of that as an investor, not a collector? You need to not be catching the peaks. You need to be selling the peaks, right? So if we're doing that here on this podcast, I will say that it's my first time where I've gone through a whole cycle of buying throughout the off season, selling through spring training and opening day, and still continuing to do that, and kind of recouping my bag. So that's been really fun. I was able to kind of capitalize on some guys making the pros, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well, as I also invested in Riley Green and O'Neill Cruz, and that's kind of not here yet. But some of the guys that I have seen nice wins on are Jeremy Pena already, like hitting a home run while I don't know if you saw this, but his family was being interviewed about his opening day, and he hits a home run while they're interviewing his parents. It was like such a perfect moment, and it was on the new Apple Plus, the Apple Plus Friday night show that the MLB is now partnered with Apple, and they were like doing that interview, and it was just the broadcast itself. I'll just talk about that for a minute second. Was not great. Like the broadcasters, I was like, man, you guys did like a $10 million product and brought people in that were like barely knew what they were doing. But I do think it's the first time they've ever done it. I do think it continues to get better. But what a cool moment where Pena goes deep while his family's being interviewed. His dad was a major leaguer. They were talking about that. Just super cool. But anyway, I made some good returns on him already. Made some good returns on Julio Rodriguez, obviously, as he makes the opening day roster, and we'll continue to talk about him later in the episode. And then also just selling some Kelnicks and Nick Gonzalez and just guys that I've been really high on all offseason that are still playing well. So I knew fundamentally that as soon as the lockout was over, cards would start moving again, and I just trusted that, and that's happened. So that's been really fun.
I think that's important. So let's dig in real quick because I'm curious. When did you buy each of those cards roughly, and what price range roughly were they? And sort of give us like an overview on like what cards were they. You don't have to get the actual detail of each card, but I just want to set the stage for like a little bit more detail on what you're doing and then what you sold them for.
Yeah.
For the audience.
So with the Julio Rodriguez's specifically, I liked him and I was watching him and I was realizing his price was getting very out of hand quickly, even in the off season, because he was just exploding. And I think I bought my first Julio Rodriguez, just a regular Bowman first, not autographed. I think in July of last year. So even during the season last year, but then I put down quite a bit, even on just regular Bowman first papers and things, all throughout the off season. And then I bought 2 PSA 10s, Bowman first. One was a Mojo and one was a Camo, for about 150 a piece at the time. And I was like, wow, that's expensive for just a regular Bowman first, Mojo and Camo PSA 10, like not autographed. I mean, these are just regular Bowman Chrome firsts. And then I was like, but I believe in him, so I'm just going to do it. And I was able to turn about $100 profit on each one, which was really nice. I held it for I think the hold for both of them was a little longer than I wanted it to be. I wanted to be able to flip him in spring training, but with the lockout and everything, that didn't exactly go to plan. But I bought the PSA 10s in December and January, and then flipped them both in March or April.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
but he was a little bit too big for me to get in on the autographs already, which is why I typically like to dive deeper, because I'm able to give advice and get you guys in on autographs before they explode. For instance, if you had listened to the opening day podcast the day of and then bought a Jeremy Pena the day of, the next day you could have sold it for $150 profit. And that would have been a really nice one day turn.
Yep.
So I was able to buy into him anywhere between $75 and $110 on any of his Bowman Chrome autos. And and the floor price on them right now is $200 on eBay sold comps on just raw base autos. So I'm looking to move those this week. I'm about to put them on eBay later today, probably. I might not move one just to hold it and maybe get it graded, because I still like him as a player, and sometimes I like to keep the ones I like. But yeah, but I was able to sell 2 Sapphires for about 20 piece. Sapphire first, no auto, which is really nice. I think I got them for like $6. So even on the smaller end, you're able to make nice plays on some of these guys that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's good to know. So really, like, these are, I would say, lower end cards, and you hit on the player, you hit on the player performance, which is one big thing we always talk about. We kind of, I think we tend to lean player performance heavy with our investment advice, but we also try to talk about like what cards to buy. So it is nice to know that you can sort of trust your gut and, you know, listen to us to learn more. Kendall's right. Like Jeremy Pena, we put out the baseball card strategy show on opening day. And then that is a play that you could have made if you heard the show that day. So that's
You would
pretty
have had to
awesome.
have been very quick, but I didn't expect him to blow up that
Yeah.
fast. But just because
Yeah.
of the whole interview and everything, and just went wild. So
And now that there's momentum there, it sounds like there could still be additional room for growth, right? So not
oh yeah,
necessarily that you
yeah,
need to go buy him right now, but if you just didn't have a chance to sell him, I think there's probably like you're probably still in good shape.
yeah, yeah. If you didn't buy in yet, I wouldn't say buy now. I mean, unless you just love him and you want to hold it as a personal, then you might as well buy now before it gets out of hand. But I think he potentially makes the All-Star team this year, as a rookie, and that's probably going to moon his price, I would assume. So I mean, if you wanted to try to play that, go for it. I'm not advising that. I mean, technically, none of this is financial advice. So, uh,
So yeah,
but
I mean, I
anyway,
think like All-Star game did sort of help certain guys last year. I mean, specifically Otani. I don't know how much it helped other guys, but I know that there was Otani's prices were rising at the beginning of last year, and then they really took off around the All-Star break. I don't know if you have a comment on any other guys that you remember that did that, but it
yeah.
does seem like the All-Star game is a key marker for a lot of guys' card prices to rise because there is a lot of hype leading up to All-Star, like just the All-Star break.
Yeah, it doesn't work for every guy, especially the guys that are supposed to make the team, I guess, if that makes sense. You know,
Yeah,
like Mike Trout's value doesn't rise when he makes the All-Star team. It just really falls if he doesn't, you know? And so
yeah,
it's like, it's not really fair, but so Mike Trout's value doesn't really rise if he makes the All-Star team. It actually falls if he doesn't. So, but another guy that I was thinking of is he was a rookie last year as Adolis Garcia makes the All-Star team. It's his first year in the majors. His prices go nuts. You know, like it was another one of those things where people were just trying to find his cards. He was a late bloomer. And so there wasn't a whole lot of cards, and it was actually his first were coming out of like a 2016 maybe. Actually maybe 2017. I don't have it right in front of me, but just off the dome, Adolis Garcia was one that was that gained a lot of steam from being a rookie that made the All-Star team last year. And then after the All-Star break, his prices went down. So I would say like my ultimate like let's get out of Jeremy Pena type thing would either be depending on how the Astros are doing is important. But I would say probably the All-Star game, or potentially if the Astros are just slaying the West, maybe wait for a playoff push there. Because I mean he's the guy. So
Yeah. But I mean, in general, would you say that like the play is to essentially do what you did? Like you and Kyle Walter, Kyle, we'll give him another shout out, Kyle Walter, Let's Talk Wax on YouTube and Twitter. Sounds like you guys are saying like if you can buy guys that you believe in the off season for baseball, specifically prospects, buy them in November, December, maybe even January, depending, and then be ready essentially to sell them, have them ready to sell at the beginning of the next season when there's hype either around the season starting or them having an actual good performance, or getting called up maybe from one level to the other level based on depending on where they are in the minors.
yeah, that's my strategy for making big plays. Now I also am going to have like monumental small plays throughout the year, that are going to be like turning 22 Bowman cards that are coming out in April and kind of finding guys that I think are diamonds in the rough there. And then like when some of his gain steam, I'll flip those, and then I'll do that again when Topps Chrome comes out about middle of the season. And then there's inevitably going to be one guy that I probably have in my collection somewhere that's going to pop off at some point in the season and collect profits there. But something that I've been really so another thing is I also do investing and advising in the crypto tech space. So like with NFTs and cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. And something that I advise in that space too is like receive profits when capable. You're not trying to take it like at the very, very peak. And then sometimes you miss the peak and it comes down, especially with alternative investments outside of stock markets and stuff. Typically after a peak on the way up, it's slow, but after that, it's just monumentally down. Like people are fire sailing, basically trying to get back up to that peak. And they're just like, well, it wasn't $100, so I'll take 80, like, and then
Yeah.
and then someone's like, well, I'll take 70, and then like 2 seconds later, you've got a $50 card on your hands. So
Yeah, and
realized profits is really important.
I think that like that's going to happen. I talk a lot about that on the basketball card strategy show episode that, should be out right now. If you're listening to this, you can probably find the basketball card strategy show at nooffseason.com and in the sports card strategy feed on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. But yeah, I think it's similar in every sport, and just knowing a little bit more about the patterns in baseball, I think is helpful. But yeah, essentially the pattern in basketball is like once the playoff picture starts to come to light, you've got a lot of guys that are going to get, antsy and maybe sell off guys that didn't pan out and take a huge loss, or at least a loss. Whereas I think that this is where I think buying the right card and buying at the right time is probably the two most important things, maybe even more so than picking the right player. And so like all three combined are important, but yeah, I mean, I think that digging a little bit more into that is super helpful. So thanks for that on the baseball side. And then, I
mean,
know.
I'm also planning on doing that with soccer right now. Like I know the World Cup's coming later this year, so I'm buying soccer cards right now.
Yeah.
Through that whole process of quote unquote an off season, even though it's a little different because their actual leagues are still in play right now, but their big event of the media like hype will be the World Cup, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm collecting, all these cards up as a kind of a building a bankroll per se, and then I'm just going to cash that in as soon as the World Cup starts. So it's kind of the same play for me. That's kind of like what I want to do. What I desire to do is collect all off season, bring all these players in, and then dump them. Well, dump them is not the right word, I don't think, but cash in on some of those cards through the
So
hype.
on that note, before we go to the GOAT card that you acquired that I know you want to talk about, can we talk about that exact topic of buying soccer right now in April? We're in April 2022 recording this, and I think you and I have both been doing this I've been doing it for over a year. And there are some guys that I can hit on that I'm like waiting for in particular to pan out. Some a little bit riskier than others, but I'd like to get your take on some of the guys that I'll talk through real quick. Some of them we've already mentioned on the show, others we really haven't.
Yeah.
But this is going to be helpful selfishly to me, but also I think like very, very helpful to the audience to get your take.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So basically, one guy is Ansu Fati. I bought him. I invested, I would say, a pretty significant amount in him over a year ago, knowing he was injured, knowing that he had a long way back, but anticipating that at age 18 in Barcelona, basically a goal scoring machine, that he would star on the Spanish national team in the 2022 World Cup, and that he would eventually star for FC Barcelona again. And ironically, we're at Fati comeback time, maybe number 5. He's already tried to come back multiple times and had other nagging injuries from after his major knee surgeries. But I am holding currently like 3 of his graded mega cracks 2019 rookies. Those are probably the biggest. And I've also started to look again. There are some Fati autos that are circulating. His rookie autos, I think, are way too risky, but there are some second year autos in some of the more recognizable Panini sets that I'm just interested in your take on maybe a rejuvenated Ansu Fati market for the World Cup.
Yeah, I bought a Fati card, a PSA 10 Fati Topps Chrome, I believe, at the National last year. I actually bought it the first day I was there. I saw it in a case, and I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good price. And I was like, hey, would you take $180 for it? And the guy was like, yeah. And so I walked away day one being like, okay, that's most of my budget for the week, So, but with Fati specifically, I'm still in on him. But I would say that I'm not as bullish as I was. Let's just put it that way, because of all the nagging injuries, it's just like, I feel like it's getting harder and harder for him to come in. And with Barcelona really not being the Barcelona we're used to right now, I think I don't know if Fati actually ends up staying. I'm not 100% on that, but like, there's a lot of guys that I like more than Fati right now, even though I have Fati in my collection. But I think he obviously has room to run. Very talented kid, and the World Cup will be good. It'll be big for him to have a display internationally on the World Cup level. And it'll be good for not only him, but it'll be also good for Barcelona. I'm just really not sure what Barcelona is going to do right now. It seems like they're still trying to figure out what's next. They're in the post-Messi era now, and I don't feel like they've figured out exactly what that's going to look like. For like the last 20 years, they've basically known exactly what they were going to do. And then before that, they had Ronaldinho. They brought in at the same around the same era. They had Zlatan and some other huge names, and now it's just like, okay, we've got this 18-year-old that just keeps getting hurt, and it's interesting. I think the Barcelona team in general is interesting, and I think Fati is also a piece of that, because it seems like the entire team should be hyped, and the entire team is kind of not where they're supposed to be, I feel like. So
Yeah, and I'm trying to
that's
make
affecting not only him but also Dest and some other players. You know, like it's just, I mean, it's a conundrum right now with the Barca.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to earlier episodes of the Sports Card Strategy Show, I mean, I have invested in some Pedri autos. I've invested in, I'm big on Gavi. I haven't bought
Did you
any of
get a
his
Gavi
cards
card?
yet because I haven't found a Gavi card yet that I want to invest in because he's so new. So I'm still sort of waiting to. I've been searching for a Gavi card, but like I have, I have invested in like. I'll show you guys in a second, but like Kendall's convinced me to buy some Gio Reyna. We've talked about my new love affair for Caden Clark. There's all these different guys. I'm debating on some Pulisic cards. So it's not just Fati. It's just that like this, what I wanted to bring to the audience's attention is like this card right here, for example, a 2020 Topps Merlin Chrome Fati Refractor Auto normally would be like $399.95, like under $400. Buy it now. I actually did make an offer for this card at $350 and it was declined. So that sort of tells me a few things. Number one, the Fati market could be heating back up again just because he is about to return again. Number two, like if he wasn't injured, I think this card would be like, if for whatever reason, like his injuries weren't as serious or whatever, like this card would be a steal, I believe, at this price.
Yeah.
I just think he's definitely like a controversial guy just because if he wasn't injured, he like undoubtedly in my mind is like number one or number two on everyone's list. Like Fati as like the next, like I think he's up there with Mbappe based on what I saw, but then he got injured and now it's sort of like, well, is this kid ever going to be even a shell of what we thought he could be kind of thing? And so I just kind of wanted to, I wanted to use this as one example of kind of your baseball analogy a minute ago about have a gut feeling on a guy and there's some markers coming up and you really believe, then I think this could be a card that could pay off at this price potentially, but it definitely is a huge risk. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a huge risk. So
yeah, I think Fati specific. I mean, if you would have like Paul, if you would have asked me 12 months ago, I'd have been all in on Fati, and I would have told you buy that card. It's going to be worth a bazillion dollars.
Yeah,
and I would have been like, yes, yes, yes. I mean, the guy's scoring. I mean, he's got 14 goals and 36 appearances. That's almost a half goal
ridiculous.
a game.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. He's been halfway hurt most of those times.
Yeah.
I mean, he's even got he's got a goal and 4 caps for the national team. So that, I mean, that's a quarter goal a game. Like that's nice. His expected goal percentage, I'm sure, is really high. His X goal in terms of his analytics and stuff. And so this guy's probably going to be, if he's on the field, that level. But that sentence, if he's on the field, is important. And unfortunately, the other 2 guys that we were really high on a couple of months ago also can't stay on the field. We've got Gio hurt himself in the first minute of the game this weekend, and Caden Clark can't get minutes because he can't get healthy.
So it's looking to be like more just waiting, and just holding and just like, I think that the moment will pay off for all 3 of those guys. Right. But it's just like you have to be patient and you have to be ready to sell. And then just know that if you do sell prematurely, you better have a good strategic reason for doing that because you're going to take a big loss. And that their chances are there will be moments for these guys, and they're all so young. They're all
under 20, all 3 of them.
They're all. And we are prospecting, so it's super young. Now, another guy that fits that mold 2 more guys that fit that mold just real quick. One is Yunus Musa. We've talked about him before. I still love him. I'm just noticing that there are some, you can see I'm winning a couple bids with less than 12 hours left on a couple of these cards, and they are from the 2021 Immaculate Soccer set, and they're each jersey autos numbered to 99. Current highest bids are both under $100, and I'm just wondering, like, they each have more than 10 bids on them, so more than likely these are going to be $200, $250 winning bids. and that's not cheap. So like, what's your advice on, kind of leading up to the end of an eBay auction, with a player like Yunus Musa and cards like these? What kind of advice would you give the audience, I guess, on both Musa and just kind of in these situations in eBay auctions from your experience?
Yeah, I love these immaculate patches. I think I've seen a bunch of them go. I've seen a bunch of Tim Weah ones go for really nice prices. It seems like there's a bunch of people that are making plays for these now. 6 months ago, nobody was dealing in immaculate patch autos, and it was crazy how cheap you could get them for a couple of Americans. But this is potentially a card that's going to sell really well. I mean, out of the four, if you've got Fati, Gio, Caden, and Musa is the most healthy. And so right now it might just be a guy like that. You're like, okay, for sure he's going to play in Nations League this summer, and then so he's also going to gain some hype in this summer, and then he's also going to gain some hype with the World Cup. So for this guy specifically, I would say it's probably going to end up being around 250, a little bit like what you said. What I like to do is if I'm interested in a card in an eBay auction, but before 24 hours left on a card, I don't make any bids. So like I'll make a bid over 24 hours, maybe a couple of days out, just to know that I'm interested. So it's in my watch list per se, so I get notifications if somebody outbids me, something like that. But inside of 24 hours, I don't make any bids, even if I'm losing, because I don't want to give another person a chance to say, I'll drive this price up a little bit more. Oh, I'll drive this price up a little bit more. And so typically I wait within 5 minutes, and then no matter what I'm doing, what I usually do is I'm like, yeah, I have to go to the bathroom anywhere I'm at. And I just sit in the stall and I just watch this auction for 5 minutes and make sure. And typically with about 10 to 15 seconds left, I put my highest bid I'm comfortable with. And if I lose it, I lose it, but at least I had a chance.
Yeah, I think that's a modified strategy to mine, and it's a little bit better than what I do. I've definitely learned, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because it is something I think that most sports card content creators fail to talk about, is this eBay bidding strategy. And I've learned similarly that you are kind of bidding against yourself if you if you continuously bid on an auction outside of like maybe 2 hours left. I think that like you could even go as close as 5 minutes. I think you're absolutely right. I think that like anything, especially anything outside of a day, you're like really, really bidding against yourself because you are giving all these other people the opportunity to basically have to bid against you. And so I think that I've lost auctions on tons of cards that I've wanted with a strategy other than that. And I've probably like artificially driven up the price with other people doing the same thing. Right. I don't think that that's bad necessarily for the card market because ultimately you are getting somebody paying for these sales. But I do think that like to actually get your best chance at a bargain, so to say, it would be to do exactly what you said, Kendall, which is to like wait until the last minute you can possibly wait. My challenge is living in Spain. Most of these auctions end while I'm asleep. And so my modified strategy is I typically will say, all right, this is the highest I am willing to pay. I am overpaying if I go any higher than this. And I will just go there, maybe add a few cents or something like that at the end of it, $1 or whatever, so that I don't get outbid by just a stupid amount. But yeah, I'm kind of out of the running. So yeah, with these Musa cards, I am a big fan of them. I'm debating, how much money to put into him. I moved out of some other base stuff, but I still love him. And so now I'm looking at what cards have the potential to actually go quite a bit higher based on his performance. The last guy I just wanted to mention, you can see, well, this is not the last guy, but you can see I've got Mike Jasecki in here. Shout out to our guy, Andy Case. from Football Card Quest, who was all over Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, he
I'm
was.
stopping at $10.50 on Mike Gesicki's rookie ticket. It's just not really a card that I want to own, to be honest. So I'm just gonna stop. No offense to Andy, he's probably right on him. But the guy I wanted to talk about is Joao Felix, because he's super young. There seems to have been a lot of hype around him maybe a couple years ago when he came into La Liga.
Yeah.
But he's seems to have like fallen off of everyone's radar in terms of like a soccer card investment. I don't know if that's because Atletico de Madrid hasn't really done anything in the last couple years, or I don't know if that's because Joao Felix hasn't really done anything of note. I mean, he's on Portugal's national team, so in theory, he should be able to pair up with some pretty darn good players and do some things. But like, what's your take on this guy? Because he's not someone that we've talked about on the show, and he just barely made it into the soccer card rankings at nooffseason.com.
Yeah, he's not a guy that's in my top 5. We'll just put it that way. But he is a guy that's in my top 15 in terms of investments that I'm making. I think he's getting overshadowed in a couple of different areas, and I don't think that's uncommon. It's weird because he's a little bit older than some of the guys that are just popping off right now. So, for instance, he's ancient at 22 years old, and so and he has a guy that had the limelight and it's kind of gone away from it for a little bit, but he's coming back and he's scoring for a Portugal team that's going to be really interesting this year. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of media hype, but it's going to be secondary media hype, and everybody knows the main Portugal star in this World Cup is going to be Cristiano Ronaldo. Every game they're going to talk about Ronaldo. They're Ronaldo. But Felix does have an opportunity to, if he plays well and everybody is talking about Ronaldo, there's going to be no way you can avoid talking about him. I mean, he's a guy that's definitely stepping in place to be the next guy there for Portugal. I mean, he's got other players around him. There are several others. But with Joao Felix, like, I wished he didn't go to Atletico, actually, because Atleti, for some reason, people go to Atleti and then just lose value, I think, to me. Not in soccer in general, like not actual value, but I'm talking like in card value. Like when Griezmann went back there, I felt like his cards dropped. When any of the other guys that have gone to Atletico that I was like really excited about, I feel like their cards have dropped. For instance, I saw a media thing come out a couple of months ago that Haaland may end up going to. Atleti has had conversations about bringing him in. And I was just like, I mean, I wish he had gone. I hope that does not happen because as much as that would be really great for his career and to be playing in a top league in Spain, Atleti might end up being the top team there soon. The other two teams are kind of faltering in terms of they don't have their guy other than Junior is definitely very good. And I'm not trying to say that Real Madrid is in question, but Barcelona definitely has some questions. And Atleti definitely has a time to step in to being more of a dominant player in La Liga than they have been previously. And although they have been very, very good and top shelf, they're definitely that top 3 team in La Liga, but they're definitely still 3. Maybe they have a chance to move up in that ranking in the next couple of years. But right now, with Joao Felix, I wish he was just on a different team.
Yeah.
Because it's like nobody gets super excited about Atleti except for like the 5 kids in the back room that are like, and everyone's like, yeah, those are those crazy Atleti fans. Even
Yeah,
when I went to Madrid 2 years ago, we literally landed at the airport and I'm sure you know this, but in Madrid, the Atleti Stadium is actually close to the airport. And so you drive by it, or we did in particular, to the place we were going. We were staying south of Spain, and it's a little bit outside of town. It's a little bit Southsider type feel. The stadium is kind of just out in the open. But then I had to take 30 trains to get to the Bernabeu. And
Yeah.
when I got there, I was like, holy cow, this is definitely the team everybody cares about here. Like, even people in Madrid, they were like, they didn't even consider Atleti like the team that's in their city.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, they've always been number 2, you know, and it's like, it's just, I still feel like that is playing on some things as well. So unfortunately, Joao Felix is in my top 15 because of those things, even though in terms of performance, in terms of skill and ability, I mean, he's probably way up there. But I think due to some other media factors, which we've seen affect card values in every sport, not every time is the best player the most valuable card. And so sometimes it has a lot to do with their media hype and what team they're on and a lot of that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And there's like at least 5 or 6 other guys that I want to dig into, but Kendall is also the host of the Soccer Card Strategy Show on the nooffseason.com sports card content network. So we'll get into more of that on an upcoming episode of the Soccer Card Strategy Show. But let's get back to baseball real quick, because I want to give you some time to talk about this purchase that you made.
Yes, Paul, I'm so excited about this. Like, I have been looking for one of these Mike Trout cards forever. Like, even before I was really like gung-ho in investing. Like, when I just had a bunch of cards, I was like, man, I'd love to have a Mike Trout rookie card, you know, just from like not even really knowing how much it was worth. And so I was chatting with a buddy the other day, and we actually just play fantasy together. We play fantasy baseball together, and we're on our Slack channels, and he's talking to me, and he goes, I had said something about how we were talking about a trade of a player, and I was like, yeah, I particularly like that player on your team. If you're going to throw in one, you know, like, you know how those fantasy transactions go. And with all that, he was like, yeah, you know, like, and he's really big on Miguel Vargas, which I also like Miguel Vargas, but he was like wanted him big time, and he was going to overpay for him. And I was like, okay, why? And he was like, I have like 25 Miguel Vargas autos, like Bowman Chrome autos. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know you collected cards. You know, like, I do that for like a business, right? And he was like, no, I didn't. So then we got to talking about it. And he goes, dude, I found out that I have a Mike Trout rookie card that has been in a top loader in a box for the last 11 years that hasn't even seen sunlight. And I was like, what? And he showed it to me, and I was like, I will buy that from you right now. Right now. And he was like, I don't even know what it's worth. I was like, I'll give you $450 today if you get that in the mail. And he was like, dude, that's huge for my family. And I was like, I'm not kidding. I will Venmo you. And he was like, oh, okay. And so he did that, and I was just like, I got one. And so typically the reason why I was so excited to particularly get this one from him is he sent me some pictures of it, and it is mint. And I have it next to me right now, actually. Here it is. I put it in a little one touch here. But, I mean, I saw some pictures of it, and it was absolutely mint. And when I got it in my hands, I was like, this is a perfect card. Edges and corners are incredible. And this was the card I was really looking for, because unlike the one on your screen right now, this is the Bowman rookie card of Mike Trout. But the red jersey one it has a lower pop, and it is his Bowman Chrome rookie card. And so, like, that specifically red jersey Bowman card was the one that I was really, really looking for. And as you can tell, there's a bazillion and a half Mike Trout cards that are valuable. So I ended up getting it at $450, which is a little bit of an overpay in terms of what it's like on the market right now. As you're looking at it, it's about 400, between 400 and 450. But I feel like Mike Trout is at his floor, considering the injuries from last year. I think he's a guy that's definitely going to have perennial value. Like, I mean, people are already talking about him being one of the best ever. I've always wanted this red jersey Bowman Chrome card because of the black borders and everything. It's like super unique, and I was able to get it at a good price at a guy I trusted, and I brought it home, and I'm sending it to PSA today. So.
Beautiful move. I mean, just a few comments on this. This card in particular is an example of like you can still grade with PSA and immediately make good returns because you've got $450 into this card. You're probably going to put 50 or 60 more into it. And
Yep.
you've got PSA 10 selling right now for over 2,500. But to your point, I agree with you. This is at its floor, I believe. So like, yeah, Mike Trout's in our
What's
top
the chart
40.
look like?
Mike, yeah, while we look at the chart, I mean, Mike Trout. So the PSA 10's up a little bit over the last
That's over the
30
last 30
days. The
days.
raw is down a little bit, not that much, but over the last 30 days. So it's about even over the last 30 days. But I think that the that's probably a good sign because I think to me that's a sign of, I mean, we can all manipulate the data into whatever we want it to be, but to me this is a sign of, okay, everyone's kind of realizing this guy's a GOAT and he is coming back and there's no reason why he can't have another amazing season. He's still young. And so he's like a
And 3 games into the season, he's destroying the baseball. And so I'm like, yes, sir, Mike. Let's just get on the Mike train.
Let's go. Yeah, exactly. So we moved him up. I had like a oh shit moment where I was updating the investment report and I was like, oh, Mike Trout's back. He's got to be in our top 40 for sure. So he's back up in the top 40 and I think in the top 15 or 20 overall baseball players, which is saying something considering most of them are prospects. You know, to have like one of the greatest of all time back up in a buy now moment, you don't get that very often. So I think this was a great play by you. And anything else you want to add about like buying a GOAT card?
I would say, so the reason why I overpaid and why it took me so long to get one is because typically I have seen them on eBay, and the mint ones, the ones that you really would want to buy, people put them on there knowing that you're going to grade this and get 10x. And so they put them on there for $600-700 when the price of it's really around $450, or around 400 right now. And so what I would have been seeing is I'll see one for like 390 to 410 and it'll have a really bold print mark on it, or like one of the corners is dinged or something. And I'm like, I've been holding out knowing, okay, Kendall, you like this card, you want this specific card. This is for what it's worth. This was like a holy grail card for me. Like this is one like I now have to go figure out, okay, what's my next card I'm shooting for? Because this one was one of those for me. And so when I had looked at some of those auctions on eBay, they just get it on just by looking at it on terms of the eBay sales and stuff like that. It was not where I wanted it to be in terms of price. And so this one was specifically very unique situation where I was able to get in a little bit higher than floor price, but because of the situation where it was a buddy of mine and he doesn't necessarily collect and invest. And so for him, I think they were able to pay off their car with it. So it was like, it was a awesome move for him and in his mind. But for me, I'm like, it's an awesome move for me in my mind. So it's ended up being a win-win. And sometimes you don't always get to just rely on the perfect opportunities, but this one was one of those that just kind of fell in my lap.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good deal. Good example of like being patient, knowing that there's a card that you want in a specific condition for a certain price that you have a plan for and you executed it. And I look forward to hearing more about the Mike Trout journey. Hopefully we'll get an update when you get it back from PSA and what you want to do. What you want to do with it there. So that's actually a good segue into the next topic. PSA subbing, I think, is kind of back. At least it is in my mind. I'm starting to look at cards with that in mind potentially. So what are your thoughts on PSA subbing right now? What do you got going on?
So this is a little bit of a promotion of wild cards. So what we decided to do was, for those of you guys that are not aware, PSA has lowered their price back down to an economy standard of a $50 submission for a non-autoed card. Here's a caveat here with an asterisk of if you are a PSA submission club participant, which is I think $100 a month. And so potentially, if you're just trying to submit one card, it's actually cheaper for you to go submit it to the $100 valuation. But I mean, it better be a Mike Trout per se. Like, you better have enough window in there that a $100 submission is not going to ding your potential return. And so that's not really capable for a lot of people. But what Wildcards has done as a business, so me and T have subscribed to the PSA list, and we get about 20 submissions every Tuesday and Thursday. So, for instance, we could submit 40 cards a week if we wanted to. And so what we've done is we've said, okay, we're going to hold like maybe 3 to 5 spots a week for T and I to like invest in our cards. But then everything else is open to anybody who wants to submit with us. And so what we've tried to do is give that a access point to somebody who wanted to just submit so what we're doing, just to be completely clear, is we're just making a $10 profit, including shipping on it. And so it's like, we charging $60 for you to send us a card that is like, for instance, this Bobby Witt Jr. over on my shoulder. That's just a Bowman Chrome 10. So this one would be a $60 submission through us. An auto would be a $70 submission through us, because PSA is saying $50 for a PSA graded non-auto and $60 for an auto. So $10 markup. We're just trying to give people accessibility to getting their favorite cards in the most high quality slab that you can do for your investment portfolio. I just hate it when people have like a Bowman Chrome out of 5 incredible auto, and they go and they put it in like a FCG slab. And I'm just like, you just killed that card. You literally murdered that card, because now you're going to have to sell it for basically raw value, or maybe less, because now that person knows that they are going to have to work extra hard to either crack the slab or submit it to a crossover or something. Like, there's just a lot of variables. And so were like, we're going to put down that we know that we can get at least 10 of these a month for people that are really excited about submitting. So find a service like that. Maybe if it's not ours, maybe it's local to your city, go into your card shop, see if they have some kind of deal like that. It's actually pretty popular. Like, we're not obviously the first ones to think about it. But we do have that. If you'd like that as a service as well, you can hit me up on Twitter if you want that. And we'll get you connected. But in regards to why it is a good opportunity now is, Paul, we know this. We've looked at charts, and I think over the last couple of years, we're like, like maybe who's number 2? It's not even close. Like, PSA is they're the top dogs. Like, if you want top dollar for your card, it's got to be in a clear and red slab. Like, there's just, I mean, people almost turn up their nose at a table if it's not in a PSA slab. Like, it can be a beautiful SGC 10 or a Beckett Black Label even, and people are just like, rather have a PSA 10. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't quite get that, like, but at the same time, the market does what the market does. And we've talked a lot about how sometimes we have to be more less about our own personal interests and more about what the market's doing, right? I mean, you talked about that a few weeks ago, about how you were like, some of the soccer guys that I'm like, I want them to be valuable, but the market just doesn't have them where I have them. And sometimes I have SGC higher than the market has the SGC. But at the same time, I want value for my cards, so I'm going to have to submit it to PSA. It's just part of the game sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I think, for example, I'll give a few real life examples where I look at this and I say, all right, well, if you don't want it in an SGC slab, and an SGC slab isn't as valuable as a PSA slab, I know that SGC grades comparably hard to PSA. Some people say even harder. I mean, I don't even really want to get into that. The point is, like, if you have an SGC 10, there's a good chance it would be a PSA 10. And so plays for me that I bought this Darius Garland rookie auto 10-10 in an SGC slab. And I think if I crossed this over to PSA and it got a 10, it would up the value. At least I think it would double the value. I think I don't think, I mean, I think that based on the research that I've done. Same thing with this Devin Booker. This is a True Gem Mint BGS 9.5 that I got for significantly less than a PSA 10. This is a Giannis. So I do have a couple specific questions for you, though. So this is a Beckett authenticated autograph on a Giannis NBA Hoops rookie. Now, the card itself is probably less than $15. The fact that Giannis has signed it and it's authenticated makes it probably more like a potentially $750 card. And so, but I do know that if this were graded and authenticated by PSA, let's say it's even a PSA 8 with a 10 auto, just the fact that it's in that slab, I think potentially doubles the value to $1,500. The same thing with this Jerry Rice. So this is a Jerry Rice 1986 rookie, and it's an authenticated auto, and it's in an old PSA slab. So I'm looking at making I'm actually looking at making 2 to 4 potential plays, one potentially with each of these cards. Because a Jerry Rice, if this card were graded and the auto is authenticated in a PSA slab, in a new PSA slab, I bought this card for about $250. I think that all of a sudden this could be like a $1,250 card if it's, say, graded a PSA 8 with an authenticated auto. I might not be exact on those numbers, but Mike, I guess I have a twofold question to you. A, am I on the right track? And B, do you happen to know what's the safest and best way to get these crossover graded with the card grade and the auto authenticated by PSA? Because what I don't want to do is open myself up for the risk of PSA looking at either of these autos again and going, well, we don't know, and whatever. What I was thinking of doing is bringing them to the National and going to the PSA booth and trying to figure out asking somebody at PSA, can you do it? Like, what's the cost of them doing it at the National? And is that safer than actually sending them into PSA? It's kind of a loaded question, but what's your take overall on it?
If you want to stand in the line at PSA at the National, go for it. It's like 1.5 miles long.
So then I miss the whole National is what you're telling me?
Yeah, I mean, if you get if you have the early bird access or whatever, where you can get in 30 minutes earlier than everyone else, like if you bought that ticket and you just go early in the morning and just go straight to the PSA booth, you should be fine. But if you are midday and all these breakers have been breaking all this product, somebody finds a card they all of a sudden bang one, an out of 5 auto, rookie patch auto of Justin Herbert or something, they're going straight to the PSA booth with it. And that happens a lot at the National. So basically, if you get there early in the morning, you should be fine. But what I would do, and I know that I've considered some crossovers myself. I have 2 Beckett 9.5s that I think would grade out as a PSA 10 for autos, and then I also have a Holland Beckett 9.5 that I want in a PSA 10. And so I'm considering some crossovers as well. And what I've researched into it is if you send a crossover in the mail, they'll actually evaluate the card in the slab first. They won't break the slab and then look at it. And so you can say hey, I want to cross over this BGS 9.5, but if it's a PSA 10, then I want it crossed over. If you think it's a PSA 9, then just send it back to me. And so potentially that could be what you do if you didn't do the in-person with these. For instance, if you feel like the Jerry Rice might not be an authentic signature or something like that, or if it grades out, I can't see the whole card here, but maybe if it's it looks like it's centered up and down not well, so you might get dinged for that, maybe a 9 or 8. But either way, with a GOAT card, it's a little different. An 8-9 isn't so bad if it's a vintage GOAT card. So this looks like the corners are pretty good. That bottom right one may have a light soft, but I think it's worth it. Yeah, I think you definitely should take it into to the national. I think that's probably the move that I would do. Yeah, the back's pretty off centered, up to down as well. Um, that's pretty common for vintage cards too.
Yeah.
But
I just feel like even just to have this in a new slab would increase the value a little bit just
I
because.
also think PSA does that too. I think there is a service to where they can update the slabs.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. Well, next up on the docket here, let's talk about just some before and after real quick because I want to get your take on. We talked a little bit earlier about sort of the window of selling prospect cards within the major league season, and so I think we missed one marker with O'Neal Cruz because he didn't get the call up. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the next logical marker is that when he does get called up, and one thing you and I were kind of texting about is, what the fact that O'Neal Cruz didn't get the call up, and that was kind of surprising, disappointing. Um, Looking into I won't bore the audience with it, but in general, we haven't really seen many sales since he didn't get the call up. Thus, there really hasn't been a dip in his value. So initially, that tells me that everyone's just sort of holding O'Neal Cruz. Am I right to assume that there's going to be a marker, there's going to be a moment when he does get called up? And do you sell your O'Neal Cruz investments when the news of that breaks? What do you do with O'Neal Cruz?
Um, I was pretty surprised this happened. First off, I was pretty surprised that. So what is happening here is O'Neal Cruz is suffering from something that was in one of the major discussions of the collective bargaining agreement over the last summer or winter. So one of the reasons why they were fighting is called service time manipulation. For instance, the way that the current argument, the last argument was set up is if a player had any sort of service time uh, set up to where they could delay it by a certain period of time and get the at bats down below a certain level at bats in terms of how many times he swings the bat during the season. If it gets down below a certain level, his contract would go a year longer. For instance, they would have him for 7 years instead of 6 years under the same price point of his rookie deal. So what that was a big discussion because teams are holding players back from being in the major leagues just so that they can have them a year longer at a cheaper price point. So it's benefiting only the club, and the player suffers from it. They can not only can they experience injuries potentially in the minor leagues, but they could also get stunted by that. And at the same time, towards the back end of their career, or like towards the back end of that contract, they should already have been available to have a mass deal before their age 27 season instead of having a 27, 28-year old going into free agency rather than a 26, 27-year-old going into free agency. So it's a really big stickler point for a lot. That's what a lot of the discussions were around this offseason. But unfortunately, it doesn't change until next year. And so this actually is one of the last probable times that we'll see service time manipulation happen the way it's happened over the past 20-ish years. And O'Neal's is unfortunately suffering from it again. The beneficial part of this is the prices are still low enough to where I believe you can still get in and make some decent money on him. So at one level, it's kind of given us a longer window to buy him. But as you can tell, there's not a lot of cards moving because people expect that to just pop off right as he enters the Major League Baseball. So he is with AAA. He's with the Indianapolis Indians right now, and he is absolutely crushing the ball. What the Pirates are allowing him to do is they're also trying him out in left field to figure out if he can add some position eligibility as well. That's just a benefit of him being in Indianapolis right now. They wouldn't have done that at the major league level. I believe he will be the starting shortstop for the Pirates. But at the same time, I have one of his Bowman Chrome autos listed for 400 on online because I believe it'll get to that very quickly once he gets brought up in late April. And so it's about a month where we're not going to see O'Neal Cruz in Pittsburgh. And so you potentially have a month to figure it out. And as long as he doesn't get injured in Indianapolis, which, by the way, my friend Jack McMullen is the commentator for the Indianapolis Indians, and he is phenomenal. So shout out to Jack. I've been watching a lot of O'Neal Cruz, and Jack, you are one of the best commentators, play-by-play guys I have ever heard of. I believe you're going to be in the MLB someday, and for a young guy that's in his young 20s, dude, you're incredible at what you do. But anyway, O'Neal Cruz is definitely still going to pop off, and it's just going to be later this month instead of right now.
I like to hear that because I'm waiting on a O'Neal Cruz moment. As you know, I bought this card on the show, the 2016 Bowman Chrome.
What a sick card.
Auto PSA 10 for about $650. So I'm hoping that
dude, that's you paid $650 for that, and I have one listed on eBay raw for $400. That's gotta make you feel good.
I feel good about our guy, and I still love him because they misspelled his name on the card.
Yeah. So and he was still like low enough to be like, oh well, I'll sign him anyway.
That's right. And you can see this is from my PWCC vault, and I decided, this is just a quick sidebar, I decided today that PWCC needs to sponsor the show because I think I'm the only one that ever talks in a positive way about how well the PWCC vault treats me and my business. And so I think that I'm going to continue to do that, and that they should sponsor the show to incentivize us to continue to talk about them, especially because they're getting competition. Here's the real reason why they need to sponsor, because eBay is launching a vault.
No way.
So, yes. So why would I not
really
go with eBay's vault, knowing that I can just buy, I do most of my purchasing on eBay, and I have my orders shipped to the PWCC vault. So I talked to my wife about this the other day. I'm like, why wouldn't I, when eBay launches the vault, just basically ship it directly to the eBay vault? I have to assume that they would incentivize with some lower shipping cost or free shipping or something to get people like me to use the eBay vault over the PWCC.
That's kind of sick.
See what happens. Yeah, the eBay vault would definitely make more sense unless PWCC, incentivizes in some way to continue to use their vault. But they've been great. In the meantime, going to continue using them and maybe test out the eBay vault. So, all right. So then the other guy I wanted to talk about in the same vein as O'Neal Cruz is my guy Riley Green in Detroit. Because he unfortunately fractured his foot. And so he's got a hopeful return date. We're not sure, maybe June. I think it sounds hopeful. And I'm kind of seeing the same thing post-injury. Like, I don't really see a lot of sales, and the sales that I do see are not that different in price than the sales, at least on his bigger cards, his achievable bigger cards. They don't seem that different than the sales pre-injury. So is that a similar indicator that the market is still pretty high on an upcoming moment for Riley Green in the big leagues, and that we should expect something to increase his card value this year?
Yeah, a unique thing about baseball specifically is these prospects, people have a lot of time to get in on them before they get to the major leagues typically. And so you see a lot of emotional interest into whoever people have been prospecting. And I don't think that's always the same in other sport cards. So for instance, if a guy was to get injured in another sport, and you could see his potential drop happen pretty quickly. So in baseball specifically, that people have a lot more emotional attachment to some of these things, I think, because they have so much longer to get in on these guys. And for instance, you saw that with Jared Kelenic last year, where people were all in on him for so long because it was so big with the Robinson Cano trade, and the Mets made a horrible decision that whole thing. And then Kelnick came in and kind of like crapped his pants all over the league for half a season, and his prices really didn't drop like they should have probably. And unfortunately, he's not really playing super well in the 3 games that have come out so far. He had a pretty good spring, but he's not playing as good as people expected him to come up in. And so, but his value is still there. So I think that's another example of how baseball cards specifically have a longer threshold on the downside than, for instance, some of the earlier we talked about how you see a peak and then after it, like, there's just a sharp drop off. There's not always a sharp drop off with the players that have been around for a couple of years in prospects. We did see a sharp drop off for guys like Yerman Mercedes last year, where he busted onto the scene. Everybody needed to have his cards, and then a few weeks later he wasn't good, and then all of a sudden there was just like, it was like everything in his value was super small. And so I feel like the longer the buildup, the longer the decrease, the more runway they have to kind of figure it out. And Riley is going to be one of those guys. I don't think anybody's particularly nervous about his injury. It's not a injury that's going to particularly like nag him if he heals well from it. But at the same time, it makes you feel like a little scared because, you know, like you wanted him to be out there, but at the same time, additionally, sorry, I'll finish this thought before I get distracted on another one. But so Riley Green is definitely going to come into a fun team to watch, and he's definitely going to be able to have a lot of runway. And I think Riley Green is super, super, super athletic. And honestly, I would invest in Riley Green more than I would invest in Spencer Torkelson. So, and most people are like, what the heck are you doing? You know, like, that guy's number 1 pick. And I was like, that guy only plays first base. And that guy could potentially be a DH. And that guy says he's going to play third base. No way. He's like 150 pounds bigger than any other third baseman I've ever seen. And so, but then when you look at Riley play, not only is he great at the plate, not only does he run well, the guy's diving all over the field. He's making great plays. I would just rather invest in a guy like Riley Green, and I'm assuming that I'm not the only one in that little situation. So where I was going to get distracted a second ago, the Tigers are fun to watch, my guy.
Yes, they are. They
wow.
are.
I don't know if you caught any of the games this weekend. But
I have. I've got the streaming app. The MLB TV app is great. I can watch all the games from Spain, which is not common because usually we're blacked out. But I've been able to watch. I watched Javi Baez's off the wall walk-off single, which was amazing. And then you shouted out your boy in Indy, Jack, who's the play-by-play. I got to shout out my boy Matt Shepard. Is the play-by-play guy for the Detroit Tigers. Shep and I go way back to the days where at 21 years old, I was the Detroit Shock PR director traveling on the road with Bill Lambier and the ladies of the Detroit Shock. And my only other male counterpart other than Lambier was Matt Shepard, who was the play-by-play WNBA Detroit Shock. And he was working his way up. He was trying to break through with the Pistons. He was a sideline reporter, and he's worked his ass off, and he's worked his way up. Not only was he the University of Michigan men's basketball play-by-play, but now he's the Detroit Tigers play-by-play guy for Bally Sports. So I know that's a dream of his. So shout out Shep. Good work, my man. It's great to hear your voice. And, I miss you, man. But like hearing his voice and watching the Tigers, they are fun to watch. I'm very, very excited. And actually, Kendall, this, believe it or not, segues into kind of my next question before we bring on our expected guest, Paul Fisher, to talk some golf and hockey cards. But like you mentioned Kelenic last year, kind of shit in the bed, right? Torkelson doesn't have a hit yet. And we've got Julio Rodriguez, who kind of has the hype that Kelenic had for the same franchise. So are guys like Julio Rodriguez and Spencer Torkelson going to live up to the hype like Wander, or are they going to kind of shit the bed like Kelenic? What's your hot take on that?
I loved the question when I saw it in the rundown because, man, what a question. First off, I don't know if anybody is going to be as good as Wander. I don't think anyone's going to have that kind of success. I think he's definitely once in a generation type player. And that's saying a lot. And a year ago, I was like a little iffy on what he would do in the major leagues. And as soon as he busted out, it was just like, okay, this guy is as good as I thought he was going to be, but so for these two guys specifically, I think that they are neither. And here's why. I think they're going to be in the middle somewhere. Well, not Torque. Let me talk about Julio first. So I think Julio is going to end up being better than Kelenic, even though Kelenic might end up being a more catalytic player in terms of his media presence, which we've talked about a million times is very good for card value. Kelenic is going to be a guy that's going to have a cult following. Like he's going to be a guy that's just like people just either love him or hate him. And as long as he kind of like stays like he doesn't pull a Trevor Bauer or something like that and does some crazy stuff, people will just like there will be fans that are just mega Kelenic fans just because of the way that he's come around and the way that he like plays the game with as much energy as he does. And that's just the things that make Kelenic. People are going to be a certain Kelenic market. There's going to be that. Now, Julio might be one of the best players in the league someday. Like he is just so good. And I think he also will probably end up getting good like media deals, like not NIL deals, but kind of that kind of thing. Cause I think people will start gravitating towards the next generation of players soon. And he seems like a guy who's very welcome to the limelight. I don't know if you saw any of his stuff about like welcome to opening day, but he's like, he took to social media, which baseball doesn't really have that. They don't have a guy that really is taking over. Like they wanted Mike Trout to be that guy, but Mike Trout just doesn't really care. Mike Trout just wants to play baseball, right? But they don't have a guy that's like a star and also like wants to be like the ambassador of the sport. Like we don't have a Derek Jeter right now. And so I think Julio could be that. Like he was tweeting all over the place when he was like, this has been my dream come true. And he like changed it to 44. He's got his own logo already. Like this guy, I potentially stars could align where this guy ends up being one of the faces of the league. And adversely, I think Kelenic also will benefit from that because they're on the same team, but that's a different point. But J-Rod is going to be in the middle somewhere. Torkelson will be a different story. I think there is a ticking clock on the Torkelson market, and here's why. I think he's going to be really good, but I think that he's going to take the more path of like a Nelson Cruz type player rather than a Mike Trout type player. I think he's going to end up a guy who's just mashes forever, but he's never really the guy that's like all over the, he's a guy that, for some reason, there's guys in baseball that mash, but that's all they do. And I think Torkelson might be one of those kind of guys.
Okay. So real quick, before we bring on our guest, Paul Fisher, I'm going to run you through a mini gauntlet here.
Oh, yes.
And
love the gauntlets.
I'm going to use the Baseball Card Strategy Show episode that we put out last week to name some guys that you mentioned on that show and tell you that you have $2,000 to spend on these guys, or you have $2,000 to spend on, this will hit home for you.
Don't tell him yet. Don't tell him yet.
Okay. All right. Or you can spend $2,000 on these guys: Josh Lowe, Jeremy Pena, Ellie De La Cruz, Endy Rodriguez, and Nick Gonzalez. Which of those guys? Let's first pick as many of those guys as you want. to spend 2K on,
Okay.
who would you pick? And maybe just give a generalization of the type of cards.
So if I had to pick only one of them, is that what you're asking?
You can pick one, you can pick two, but obviously if you pick two, then you're splitting the cards that you get, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. I think. Oh shoot, these guys are so good. You literally took like some of my like 5 favorite players in the game, and we're like, you can only pick one.
That's right. That's right. Narrow it down, my man.
Oh, right now, okay. So this could completely change in a month, but right now, I'm taking $2,000 and putting it down on like what? Oh shoot, hold on. Dang, Paul, there's just a lot to think about here. Okay, so am I buying the cards right now, or do I have $2,000 worth of cards right now?
You're buying them right now.
Oh, okay. Well, then Jeremy Pena is out of it because his market is kind of already exploded.
Okay.
But in terms of my long-term play, I would have said Jeremy Pena because he's already got Major League at bats and he's already tearing up the league. And so I'm going to pick the proven guy. So I'm going to kind of take him out of the equation for a second. Josh Lowe is a little bit in that equation because he did make the Major League roster, but he hasn't really done anything yet. His prices haven't really popped. I mean, they have, but not like it has in Jeremy's case. So that narrows it down to Indy, Nick, and Ellie for me. And gosh, those guys are going to be good. I'll take 2K worth of I'll take 2K worth of Ellie.
All right, nice. And so Ellie in the he's coming up, right? Like does he have cards yet, or is he coming up in the Bowman 2020 Bowman 2022?
That's what makes your next question very hard.
Yeah.
So you might as well go ahead and ask the next question first.
So you can buy Ellie De La Cruz singles for 2K, which I believe are in coming up Bowman 2022 baseball, or you can buy, get this, inside joke, 6 sealed boxes, hobby boxes of Bowman 2022 baseball for $2,000. Ellie De La Cruz singles or the sealed boxes? Which would you pick and why?
Is a major piece of that 2022 Bowman section for me. And so if I am going to pick the 6 boxes, I'm hoping I have a ton of Ellie in those 6 boxes. And so it's a little bit different. I'm going to end up choosing the wax. And here's why, because not only is Ellie in the wax, and I know that I could recoup. I probably couldn't have $2,000 worth of Ellie unless I pulled a ridiculous card. But I also have several other guys that I love in that checklist. Plus, I could hold because it's going to be Wander's rookie card wax. And I'm definitely going to just hold that. I think all Wander rookie cards are going to go ridiculous this year and probably keep that value because I don't really see him going anywhere. He's got a super stable game. And just the type of professional he is, I could see it going really well. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to choose the 6 boxes of sealed wax, just like you did, Paul.
Yep, full transparency. I actually made that investment, 2K worth of 2022 Bowman baseball sealed wax coming up, 6 hobby boxes. So fingers crossed. I think, hopefully that's a good class. We'll see. But we are excited to bring on our guest for today's episode. His name is Paul Fisher, and Paul is in Canada. He runs a business in Canada that he basically funded by investing very wisely in sports cards, starting with hockey cards in the 90s. And he also invests in golf cards and knows quite a bit about basketball cards. So we're really excited to have Paul Fisher on. He's a member of the Sports Card Investment Report at nooffseason.com. We've been trading emails for a few months now, and he's always got some great insights. So we're super excited to have him on the Sports Card Strategy Show. Hey, Paul Fisher, how you doing, my man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
So I am super, super interested in what you have to say, because when I was reading this little bio and you funded your own company through investing in sports cards, not in this bull market that we're in right now in terms of the last 3 years. Tell us about that, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been like this lifelong affair with cards. I was a kid and I just fell in love with stats, the box scores. I remember, my dad would bring the paper home, and I probably was 4 or 5 years old and just obsessed with sports stats. Cards, the back of the card. It was just this thing I was enamored with. And I was super fortunate as a kid. I inherited a nice little vintage hockey card collection through one of my uncles. And I guess I probably started looking at values before anyone else my age was. And that was right, the start of the junk wax era, 90s upper deck. And, I'd buy those packs and rip them and trade off whatever 90s stuff I had for whatever I could get that was vintage. And I fell in love with, Bobby Orr. And, it's one of those things with cards. Sometimes in life, you come back to it. I took some time off when I went away to school. My focus was on, getting my degree. And by the tail end of university, I was back to trading cards again. I'd kind of moved away from hockey and fallen in love with late 50s baseball and early 60s baseball. And, I'd break sets. I invested a decent amount of money in Mickey Mantle stuff, and ended up, obviously the market it wasn't what it is now in vintage baseball. Some of that Mantle stuff I really wish I had kept, held on to, but I was able to do quite well with it and sell it off and, turn the proceeds of that into my first business. Again, I kind of doubled down, put all my effort into growing this business. And, I guess pre-pandemic, I just started like looking at cards again. I was like, man, I needed a hobby. I needed something to take my mind off of work. I grinded, I work hard. I needed something that brought me like kind of that childhood joy, and cards were it for me. And, it was just so interesting to watch what's happened over the last couple of years. I popped back in. I wouldn't say I'm following as closely as I did maybe at the start of the pandemic. I mean, that was crazy what happened in the market. That was fun. I mean, obviously the market went nuts. There were some huge returns that were made, and fortunate to capitalize on a couple that were just, you can't hit ROIs like that anywhere else. So the game is a little different right now. I think the industry is maturing. I'm super bullish on it long term. I've always believed that cards are an alternative investment class. I think, the market goes quite a lot higher from where we are here, but I think it's changing. I think it's becoming super sophisticated. We've seen some major changes in pricing over the last couple of years. I don't think, everyone says, could a recession be really bad for cards? I think, people make money as stock pickers in down markets as well. I think there's money to be made in cards all the time, but it is really interesting how the market is continuing to evolve. And, I've really enjoyed your content, Paul. Like, you produce, holy smokes, you put out a lot of stuff, and that's fun for me. I follow along. I love the fact that you guys are on LinkedIn, and you produce a lot of content on LinkedIn, which I don't see a lot of people doing. It's great for me because I network a lot on LinkedIn, and, people in my industry, people in business here in Canada. So that's how I was kind of turned on to, what you were producing. And I enjoyed. I love the rankings, the fact that you got the website with the top 100. I know I've kind of given my input on a couple, and I just think that that's really interesting. I'm always curious to see what other people are thinking. And I love the fact that your content focuses in on some alternative investing in the scheme of cards, whether it's F1 or, UFC. You guys are soccer. You guys are talking about stuff that others aren't. I think that that's awesome. And I think that's actually where the greatest opportunity in sports cards is right now.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. You've definitely, you're definitely like making this community what it is. We want to try to build this community. And so getting feedback from very, very smart people like yourself is important to me, and having you be part of things. So I appreciate you helping us create the content And it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better. It's like, you know, I think it's like any other business, right? Like if I probably asked you, you know, this is a conversation for another day, another show, but like if I asked you, how was your business when you first started it in terms of, you know, your golf business, you'd probably tell me it's a lot better now than it was back then because of some lessons that you learned. So that's where I'm at with no off season. I'm learning my lessons and trying to make things better. So thank you for your part in that. So, hey, Paul, I wanted to jump in to some sports card specific questions after we got your background. So let's talk about the Masters, because I think, you know, to your point, like you do have to get in the way that the market is right now. You do have to kind of lift up stones and get creative with how you can make some money and make some plays. And I think that the golf card market really is an area for people to explore. I'm compelled by the golf card market, but I have some specific questions for you. Before we get into sort of those questions and the state of the golf card market, like give us kind of the Masters recap. What did you see at the Masters that just happened? And, you know, from a golf perspective, but also from a golf card perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I would say I saw the market heat up a couple of weeks ago when there was whispers that Tiger would play. I mean, Tiger is the golf business. And there's some really great young players in the game. There's no doubt about it. But Tiger, it's scary how much he is the sport. So when there was whispers that he might play, and I think a lot of people in the industry maybe had just a bit of a feeling in the pit of their stomach that he would play. Obviously, that created a lot of hype about this year's event, right? Like, the Masters is historically, it's the largest of the four majors. Everyone looks forward to it. So many of us know the holes, the history. It's a part of it's Americana, I think, the Masters. So it's really the start of the golf season. It's the kickoff of the season for the northern climates, especially for us up here. Courses aren't open yet, but when Masters rolls around, it means golf season's close. So, with the pent-up demand for golf, I think that this was probably one of the most hyped Masters I've ever seen. And then you add the Tiger layer to things, super interesting. The fact that a new number one with Scottie Scheffler emerged before the tournament, I thought that was, that doesn't happen very often. It was a recipe for a huge amount of ratings. I haven't seen what the ratings are yet, but I would assume that it was, a huge, huge TV event. I would say it was awesome in general for golf. And, very interesting that you have a player that was just named number one in the world. His first major as number one in the world wins. That's the first time that's happened since.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's huge. And, it's really interesting with Scottie Scheffler. I wouldn't say that Scottie's like a tremendously marketable golfer. He's probably not as flashy as like maybe a Justin Thomas or a Jordan Spieth. Certainly not like a Rory if Rory would have won, or if Rory would have come from behind yesterday. If Rory would have won yesterday, that would have been.
He almost got his chance with that 4-putt.
That was crazy. I mean, Rory winning the Masters would have been the second biggest story other than Tiger winning. But I think we might have something pretty special with Scottie Scheffler. This guy's got a really, really strong amateur career, a lot of wins. And I think that that's one of the things when you look towards, golf is, can you win? Can you close the deal? And he's certainly got a track record where, whether he was, a teenage phenom basically in Texas, really good college player, a couple years on tour, and now he's got 4 wins in his last 6 events. This could be a really, really good player, and he could be around for a long time. And when we see a trade-off, whether it's JT, it's, Rahm, it's DJ, there's a lot of really great players right now, but no one's really cementing themselves as the winner of this generation. So you got to know how to win to be that person. And I got this feeling, and golf, I think, is a feeling thing. I think Scottie Scheffler's going to win a lot. I think, and it might be, he might not have that that competition. It's not like the Tiger where you had Tiger and DJ, and even the era before that with Faldo and Norman. This is a little softer of a generation. I'm not saying that it's not talented, but it's more widespread out. And the fact that Scottie knows how to win is a big thing.
So in terms of like state of the golf card market, like I was searching for Scottie Scheffler cards for a few weeks leading up to the Masters, and all I could find was a Sports Illustrated for Kids card. And my problem with that is like, I won't bore everyone with the details of my personal situation, but just in general, hard to buy, grade, flip, or buy and even flip, even knowing that he's the number one in the world with a high chance of winning the Masters. What's your take on like that fact? Am I wrong? Are there other Scotty Scheffler cards? Like, is the state of the golf card market strong, or could it be a lot better just based on like, I think what I'm trying to articulate is like a little bit of a challenge with golf card investing right now, because there seems to be a few sets by Upper Deck that have some investable cards, guys like Colin Morikawa, for example. But like, where else do you go? Like, how do you even make a play on a guy like Scotty Scheffler?
Yeah, it's tough. I wouldn't say the golf card market is super strong. I mean, I think that there's definitely cult collectors out there that are, extremely well-versed on, what to buy, rare stuff, whether it's rare autos, inserts, parallels, whatever. Those people have made a lot of money over the last little while because they've been able to pick off really great investments. But in terms of, the overall state of the market, I would say it's probably one of the weakest. Obviously like F1's very, very strong right now. I think UFC's super strong. I would probably put golf like more along the lines of like WWE, probably in that category. Maybe a little bit stronger because of the whole Tiger element, but I wouldn't say that there's tremendous opportunities to like buy Scotty Scheffler rookie cards and, make a ton of money. I don't think that that's a real play. Now to your point about Morikawa, I'm surprised by the prices with Morikawa. Like they've really shot up, and maybe that's, I don't know, he's marketable. I don't know how marketable Scotty Scheffler is. Morikawa is certainly very marketable. I'm surprised at how much that's priced into the market already. Given when I look at where some rare Tiger stuff sits, I think, man, like the Tiger stuff is really, really, really undervalued. I would say the Tiger market in general is, it's picking up. It's heating up. You can feel it. You see it, whether it's eBay, PWCC. Tiger market's strong, but I would say in general, if I'm talking about the overall market, fairly weak. Tiger market extremely strong. If not, it's picking up. It's, now that he's playing again, it's starting to strengthen. Now, the one thing to consider about golf is it's not just about cards. There's also a collectible market. We just saw Tiger's iron sell for $5 million over the weekend. I would say golf memorabilia is a very strong market. Like it's a little bit different, and it's, centered in and around some of the history of the game. Golf is a very historical game. And, I would say like a comp, like $5 million for a set of irons that Tiger played, that's really strong. I'm really surprised to see that number. I thought maybe $1.5 million, something like that. That price went crazy. So that's really interesting, whether that lifts the whole memorabilia market. Maybe that increases, some Palmer and Nicklaus stuff. I don't know. I think it certainly strengthens the Tiger card market though.
Yeah.
So what about if Tiger doesn't keep rolling? Like we're obviously and have been at the tail end of Tiger's career for maybe 5-6 years. He's kind of holding on to still being in the tour, but is there a point where he moves into the I mean, I don't know a ton about golf, and you're going to see my expertise wane here, but isn't there like a elder tour that he could potentially go into, or is he just going to retire from golf completely with the injuries?
I don't think so. I mean, I think there's this, he's chasing Jack's record. And the reality is he might not win 18 major championships, but he can tie Jack with another Masters. If he gets his 6th, he could become the oldest major winner with another win at Augusta, or the oldest to win at Augusta. I think he proved that he can play. I mean, the fact that he came back from such a devastating injury after, 17 months or 16 months, whatever it was, I mean, we're talking about one of probably the most incredible feats in sports history. The fact that he was able to do that. What I think is very interesting though, is like Augusta is a golf course that he knows like the back of his hand. And the reality is, I think there's a lot of people in the industry that are saying to themselves, like he's going to win again. It's part of his story, and maybe he doesn't, but the story is not being done told. I think he's got this internal fight. He's the closest athlete we've ever seen to Jordan in terms of that, like that will to win. Maybe the most dominant. Like, I mean, I don't know, going back to the early 2000s, there was no athlete that was more dominant in a short period of time than Tiger Woods. He's got his young son, who's a really good player. I got this sneaky suspicion that Tiger's sticking around because that means something to him. He wants to see he wants his son to see him win more. He's going to come back again and play for sure at St. Andrews, which is, his favorite golf course. It's walkable. Tiger's still the best iron player in the world. He might not drive the ball as good as some of the other players on tour, but he's the best iron player in the world. I think he can win it. I honestly think he can win the British Open, and he'll be selective in terms of the events that he wins. But I think that he's going to have a serious chance to win majors over the next 5 years still.
Okay.
So what would be the Tiger Woods cards to buy right now? And what would be the play? Because I know, like, long-term, I already wholeheartedly believe in what you're saying, and you're kind of validate you coming on board and providing me a lot of your insights on golf and on Tiger specifically. I know you wanted to kind of compare him to some of the GOATs from the other sports like Brady, Jordan, Gretzky. Maybe give us, and you mentioned the memorabilia sale of his clubs going for $5 million. Bring it home for us in terms of like what cards to buy and why, and then like what would the plays be? Like would it be a bad play to buy a Tiger card now and then sell it before the British Open this year? Would it be a bet, or would it be fine? Or, I would assume you're going to say hold long-term, but maybe tell us kind of what your overall Tiger Woods golf cards plays are.
Yeah, I mean, it's without giving it away too much, and certainly don't want to come across, pumping the stuff that I've been putting money into. Like the reality is it's all about scarcity with Tiger. He's, his rookie card's got 900 auto. It's numbered to 900. So it's pretty scarce to begin with. That's the SP Authentic. There's a SP Authentic Gold that's numbered to 100. Like I look at that SP Authentic Gold that numbered to 100 and I say, okay, in the grand scheme of things, could that go to the world where a Jordan, 86 Fleer PSA 10 selling at that 285 or 250? I mean, it kind of fluctuates between 250 and 300. Based on, scarcity alone, I think that card can go there. And that's one of those situations where a rising tide lifts all boats. But for Tiger, I mean, the reality is you've got a mass printed Upper Deck rookie, and then everything else is relatively scarce in the grand scheme of things. It's hard to get into the market. You've got a 9.5 of the SP Authentic numbered to 900 rookie card trading at 15, 17 grand right now. There's not a lot of people in that world saying, well, hey, I'm going to buy a $15,000 golf card. The grand scheme of things, though, when you look at the scarcity, there might not be a better investment out there when you comp that to something like, what else is trading at 15 grand right now or in that ballpark? A Brady Bowman Chrome rookie card. And how many of those are out there in terms of print? A Steph tops, and Steph's probably a bad example. Steph's pretty low scarcity. Maybe a Gretzky PSA 8 rookie card. They've been trending upwards. What's more scarce? I mean, that Tiger card, for what we are looking at as an all-time GOAT, it's cheap. But the face value of the card is expensive. So, I mean, I think there's a huge amount of room upwards in the scarce rookie cards, in particular the SP Authentic Gold. I really believe there's a day where it goes to $250,000 plus, especially for a PSA 10. Obviously, all the lower grades will rise as a result of that. And then I think that probably the number to 900 moves into the 30-40 range as a result of the gold going up. It's interesting. I think with Tiger, the Exquisite market is, Upper Deck released the Exquisite golf collection. It was 2013, 2014. I mean, Exquisite's gone through the roof, right? Like, I mean, it's separated itself as a brand, a lot, I think, in the last year, or at least so it feels so to me. I think that stuff's really interesting, especially when you start comparing it against Jordan or the LeBron Exquisite auto market. Like, again, it's a relative, and they're very, 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 very scarce. And, you know, it's one of those things, like scarcity always seems to rise to the top. I think the insert world with Tiger is really interesting. You know, there's his Masters collection had a lot of like low print stuff that could be very interesting. There's the Jambalaya card out there. You've got the PMG card, the precious metal gems, which, you know, we're seeing huge run-ups in some of this rare 90s insert parallel. There's a couple of them out there in the Tiger world, but they're not many. So what does that mean, you know, for someone that's maybe not interested in a rookie card? Well, where are you going to put cash? Well, you know, the nostalgia of 90s inserts is huge. And those Tiger inserts are, I think they're super, the eye appeal is really high, and they're super low print run. They might be made for Upper Deck employees, but they're cool cards, and I could see those. I think there's huge, huge, huge upsides in those cards right now.
That's a great call. I think you're onto something with this. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really happy to have you on the show. Many reasons why I'm happy. That's one of them. And then the thing, I mean, just to kind of talk about the Auto 900 2001 SP Authentic Auto. I mean, that's interesting because the last sale that I see on eBay of that card was August 15th, 2021, PSA 10 last sale. Yep. For $41,600. And you mentioned a Beckett 9.5 for 17. So that's an interesting play right there. Kendall and I talked about that earlier on this episode, where if you can cross over a true gem Beckett over into a PSA 10, yep, that's a pretty big immediate return on investment just based on the last sale. You never know what the next one's going to sell for, but we have seen things like that happen with the Jordan 86 Fleer. People talking about doing that and being successful doing that. So I think there's definitely a lot of good stuff there in the Tiger market. So, Paul, while we still have you, I mean, we definitely want to try to hit a few other things. So emerging players, talk to us about you. We've already talked a little bit about Morikawa and Scheffler, but are there any other guys that we should keep an eye on in terms of who's to follow, but also who has cards and what those cards are that we should take a look at?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a bit of a vintage market as well. And it's not super exciting. Jack Nicklaus and Palmer, and, you know, there's some stuff, Bobby Jones stuff that's, you know, very, very, very valuable from the 30s and earlier. In terms of the emerging market though, like my eye is still somewhat on Rory as that number 2. I think Phil, obviously, with like kind of the recent stuff in the media, you know, maybe not in the most stable of places, you know, in terms of street cred right now. So probably staying away from Phil's stuff for the time being. But, you know, massive story if Rory wins. Obviously, you could see like the energy in and around yesterday's final round, because Rory was making a charge, was huge. If he was to get a green jacket to claim that, you know, to have all of the majors, that's a big story. He definitely moves the needle. He's the second largest player in the world outside of Tiger. I think that there's maybe a bit of a market with Rory with some rare inserts. Like he's got a precious metal gems card as well, which I think, you know, that's super interesting, especially because the Tiger cards moved up so much that I look at the Rory and I think, oh, that's cheap. If he wins another couple majors, that's a card that could go to 10 G's. But, you know, and Rory's got a couple of exquisite autos and things like that. He's probably the one I'm looking at. In terms of emerging players, you know, obviously Scheffler, no cards in the market. Brooks Koepka, I don't even think Brooks outside of the Sports Illustrated card has a rookie card yet. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what comes, you know, is there a new product? Would Fanatics, you know, potentially buy Upper Deck? And could that mean, you know, more golf cards hit the market? There's just not a ton of production out there. So we're not seeing rookie cards with some of these players like a John Rahm. So it's really hard to say. But I would say in terms of emerging, there's a couple names, you know, Justin Thomas, John Rahm, DJ, Morikawa, they're all right there. Before I think they really start to have any sort of serious value, you're going to have to see more majors though, or more wins.
Yeah, I think that like Fanatics or Upper Deck making, you know, Fanatics would have to acquire Upper Deck, but with or without Fanatics, Upper Deck making more releases, I think would be a huge step in the right direction for the golf card market, because you could start to see some of the F1 and UFC momentum just because having all those players that you just mentioned actually have legitimate cards. Upper Deck typically has affordable prices on their hobby boxes. So to go in and be first to the market on a lot of those, I could see those, we're making this up, this hypothetical Upper Deck hobby box that comes in the future. I think would be great, and would be something that I would jump into, as long as there's like a, look for an auto, look for a memorabilia card within the hobby box, those kinds of things. So
yeah, and especially with Tiger, I mean, like, we'll really see what happens over the next 5 years. But Upper Deck released a Masters collection with Tiger with some really cool stuff in it. There's an Exquisite rookie patch. I would do anything to have that card. Like, I think it's just absolutely gorgeous. It, the photo on it, and obviously this is like a historic card. It's the LeBron rookie card version. Like, I still remember that day that he beat Rocco in the playoff on the Monday. And like, I will remember that moment for the rest of my life. That is the type of card that I would lock away and have for the rest of my life. I don't look at it as an investment. That would be like a personal thing. So if there was more product that came along that I think would maybe, like, I don't know, resonate with people. Tiger means something to people, like, especially this comeback and the will to come back. Like, I think that's, sometimes people are, they connect with an athlete. I think a lot of people connected with Kobe, a lot of people connected with Jordan. I'd say, Tiger now, this human element that you're seeing, that could drive hysteria if there was a really, really good product. We just haven't seen it from the manufacturers.
Yeah. Last note on golf, and then we want to move into some quick hockey before we let you go. If there is, I'm going to do some more research on Tiger's son, because if there's some sort of Bronny James moment about to happen in the future with Tiger and his son, like there will be with LeBron and his son, that will definitely be something to keep an eye out for with his cards. So I'm glad you mentioned that. All right. So in terms of like the Canadian sports market, including hockey, and even a guy that plays for the Raptors, who I'll let you mention. Why don't you give us kind of an overview of like your top 5 sort of Canadian market investments right now, and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the Canadian market, like, I would say the Toronto sports teams maybe get overlooked a little bit. I don't know why, but it just seems like values of Toronto athletes have maybe not popped to some extent. I mean, if we're talking the overall Canadian market, Connor McDavid's number 1 for sure. I mean, we're looking at, and by the eyeball test, I go by all eyeball tests, this is the most talented hockey player I've seen since Wayne Gretzky. There's no doubt about it. He is, and the reality is the pandemic is, the shortened seasons and stuff like that has hurt his probably long-term chance of catching Gretzky on all-time points. But this is a player that is going to put up staggering numbers in a career. Is he going to win as many cups as Gretzky? Maybe not. Winning a cup is very challenging, and the game of hockey is quite a lot different now. But I would say, in terms of the grand scheme of number 1 opportunity, Connor McDavid he might be the most dominant athlete in his sport of anyone in any sport right now. He's that good. So I see him as number 1 in terms of the overall Canadian market. Number 2, I think Vladdy Guerrero Jr. This is a very talented hitter. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
You see what he did yesterday to a baseball?
Like, this is a
stupid
Manny Ramirez type hitter. I don't think he's a Barry Bonds like hitter, because Bonds was a 5-tool athlete. He was wickedly talented. I'm not saying Vladdy's not the same. He's just not he's not a very good defensive player, right? He might be a DH at some point in his career. He might even be a DH at some point this year. He's an unbelievable hitter. And when you look at things like, I think a metric that's really interesting to look at is like OPS plus, Babe Ruth, like some of these great hitters are, leading a statistic like that. Vladdy led last year. And I think Vladdy's going to be the best hitter in baseball this year. That's being a great hitter is usually a really good thing for card values. I think he's undervalued given the grand scheme of just being a Toronto athlete and probably not getting as much exposure in the U.S. media market as some of the other players that are, the Tatises, Acuna, guys like that. So he's my clear number 2. Austin Matthews is clear number 3. Austin Matthews is the best hockey player I've ever seen play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know if the Leafs are going to win a cup. If they do in the next couple of years, you might as well anoint him King of Canada. That would be like the most influential thing that any athlete, and he's an American athlete, which is interesting as well. But he is by far the most talented player to ever put the jersey on. And the Leafs are everything in a city like Toronto and really in the province of Ontario. I think there's massive upside. I mean, I look at Austin Matthews eyeball test. I say that's Mario Lemieux. So Connor McDavid's the Wayne Gretzky of this generation. Austin Matthews is Mario Lemieux. So put that in the grand scheme of, respectively in terms of cards and values. He's never going to be Connor McDavid value, but he's going to be number 2 in the overall grand scheme of the hockey market. 4, I mean, Scotty Barnes is one hell of a basketball player. In terms of what, the impact as a rookie, win shares as a rookie, I think he's 3rd highest all time behind Jordan and Bird. This guy's going to be really good. I don't know, again, if he has the style of game to be John Morant or, Devin Booker. I mean, look at Giannis. Giannis doesn't play a particularly attractive style of basketball. And I mean, he's in Milwaukee. I wouldn't say Milwaukee is like a front and center market in the US either. I think Giannis cards are wickedly undervalued, and there's a lot of reasons why, but he is the best basketball player on the planet right now. Scotty's going to be a top 15 player in the league in terms of impact. Is he marketable? I don't know, but I think that the value of the cards could go up quite a bit, especially, autos and RPAs and things like that. And then fifth's a tough one. I mean, I look at the Canadian national soccer team as, just qualified for the Olympics for the first time. Alfonso Davies, probably the best player at his position in the world.
Now we're talking, Paul. Let's go.
I've recognized my friends really getting into soccer. I mean, I grew up playing soccer. It's probably my best sport playing as a kid. Soccer is picking up steam big time in Canada, just like basketball is. It's, we've got a widely multicultural city here in Toronto. Soccer is wickedly popular. Like TFC is huge. So then, to see what the Canadian national team's done, and like, this is a good soccer team. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they go to the round of 16. It's a very good team. And Davies is the best player at his position in the world. Now, I don't know how, I guess he's a wing back or something like that. He'll score the odd goal, but I don't know how particularly, marketable that position is. But very likely going to go down as, if not already, the greatest soccer player in the history of the country.
Yeah, and I think this is great insights for all sports card investors because, Americans tend to overlook Canada a lot of the time. And so these are, I think, arbitrage opportunities with every single name that you've mentioned for not only the fact that they're just legitimate in their own right, but because there is such a strong fan base in Canada for them. And so Alfonso Davies is someone I was wondering about specifically because of his position. So you addressed that for me, and I don't disagree with you at all on Scotty Barnes, on Vlad. They're high on our sports card investment report, and great stuff. Kendall, do you have anything else for Paul?
No, I would just say in terms of the Davies thing, Bayern previously had a left back that moved up the field a little bit. What's his name? I'm blanking on it right now. Doesn't matter. He's from Austria. But anyway, they previously have had a player very much like him. They ended up moving up the field, and I think now plays for Madrid. So I think he's got the profile. He doesn't necessarily have to score tons of goals to be a threat. And I think he's definitely, especially with him coming from the MLS, his market here in the United States and Canada and North America specifically, his cards could go stupid, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, one more thing on Davies. Like, I've learned a lot about soccer card investing over the last year, and I think that there's like 2 really simple factors, more so than any other sport. And one is, do they have investable cards?
Right.
When they're super young. And 2 is, what's their projected playing time? And Kendall and I hit on that in this episode, Paul, before you joined. And there's just a lot of U.S. men's national team guys that are in the same mix, the same discussion. We don't really know who's going to play. And so I think if you can say, like, here's a North American team with like a player who's going to play, and I know they've got Jonathan David too. I'm not sure how you feel about him, but in terms of Alphonso Davies, it's like if you told a soccer card investor, like, this guy's going to play and he has investable cards, and that could make a stronger case than a lot of the U.S. men's national team guys, unfortunately, but that could be an arbitrage opportunity. I like it.
Yeah, you need a couple big cards to move the market I'm a huge believer in, like, that rising tide. You need that card that can be worth a ton of money to raise the lower end stuff. I think that obviously that creates more profile in terms of the overall investment opportunity, but I don't know about the Davies market. I mean, I know there's a couple gold parallels and stuff like that. I don't think there's a huge amount of auto stuff out there. It'll be interesting. I don't know if there's the firepower at the high end to raise all the lower end stuff. That would be probably my biggest concern. But we'll see,
Yeah, that's well said.
There's Canadians that are going to buy that stuff. If there was rare stuff on the market right now, whether it's a number to 10 or something like that, it's a good buy. There's no doubt. I just don't think you're going to see insane pricing on autos and things like that can raise the bar as much as it needs to be raised.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, like, for example, Jonathan David, like, I could be wrong, but, like, I've only found just the tops now, and like, and that's unfortunate, but hey guys, thank you so much for being on the show. Paul, you were awesome. Kendall, you were great as always. I'm super excited that we're building this community, and thanks to both of you for creating content with me, and thanks everybody for watching and listening to the Sports Card Strategy Show. We're going to have more of both of these guys coming up as part of the nooffseason.com content network. And just a quick reminder that check out the sports card investment report at nooffseason.com. You can save 20% at checkout if you use the promo code nooffseason. And special thanks to marketmoversapp.com by Sports Card Investor. You can actually get your first month for $1, only $1, by using the promo code nooffseason, all lowercase there. We're about to run out of time. Thanks everybody, and have a great day.